Welcome to today's Explainer. Okay, let's dive right in because we are exploring a truly mind-bending analysis of the source material today. We're being asked to completely abandon the idea that this text is just some static historical document. Instead, the analysis proposes a framework where the text is an eternal, living circuit, a timeless topology. It isn't just recounting the past, it's actively executing its code right now, literally in the present, through you.
So we kind of have to ask ourselves, are we dealing with just ancient history here, or is this actually living physics? It's so easy to read ancient texts as just chronicles of people who lived thousands of years ago. But what if we've been reading it backward? What if these narratives are actually structural laws, kind of like gravity or thermodynamics, mapping out the hidden physics of human consciousness?
And verse 1964 brilliantly illustrates the foundation of this whole framework. And your Lord is not forgetful. This establishes a timeless universe operating on an unbroken, remembered continuity. Nothing is lost. Every action, every oppression, every prayer, it creates a wave in this eternal field that absolutely must balance out eventually.
Here is our roadmap for the explainer today. We'll start with the eternal living circuit, move through the first separation, explore the illusion of dominion, uncover the hidden call, learn about activating the book, and finally look at continuous emergence. Let's jump into the first concept. Section 1. The eternal living circuit.
Existence doesn't run in a straight line, right? It runs on a continuous loop of transgression and return. The sources call this the Zalim rush topology. When someone commits a zalim act, an oppression, they don't just break a moral rule, they literally warp the living circuit. They force a separation in reality. The universe, which constantly seeks balance, then demands a return to pure guidance or rushed. The chain closes beautifully through this mechanism. It's a timeless system constantly correcting imbalance.
Moving on to Section 2, the first separation. How did this circuit actually get activated in human history? The sources point to the sons of Adam. In verse 528, the inversion begins. One brother threatens the other, but the righteous brother totally refuses the zolm, the oppression. He says, I want you to carry my sin and your sin. He transfers the burden of the crime entirely back to the aggressor. This creates the very first no zalim separation. He becomes the pure signal, and the aggressor is trapped in his own heavy collapsing circuit.
But then we hit verse 531. The killer doesn't know what to do with the body. So creation itself steps in. A crow teaches the killer through death itself. The sources describe this as the initiation of the burial topology. It's the moment humanity learns to bury the truth, to hide innocence in the earth. And as we'll see, this act of burying the pure signal is a pattern that returns to haunt civilization over and over again.
Which brings us to Section 3, the illusion of dominion. Because think about it. Once you bury the truth, you have to build something fake on top of it to justify your power, right? The text uses the word tagut for this false power. The sources define tagut as a structural trap, basically, a cast net. It's an illusion of heaven on earth that traps the transgressor inside a reverse bias of empty power. That is exactly why the Sabbath people matter so much in the text. The sources describe them as a visible lasso typology. The trap is openly shown so people of understanding can recognize the mechanism before it snaps shut. Take the story in verse 34:14 as a silent trigger. King Solomon dies, but his hidden death exposes the ultimate illusion of living dominion. The termite eats his staff, it breaks, and the kingdom stands completely hollow. It only survived on their ignorance. And that silence is profound. It perfectly sets up the next crucial dynamic in the circuit. Section 4. The hidden call. So, if worldly dominion is just a hollow kingdom waiting for a termite, where is the real power? Well, that silence we just talked about perfectly parallels verse 19:3, when he called his Lord secretly. Zechariah, old and exhausted, calling out in secret. The source analysis calls this the minimum viable signal. It completely bypasses all that loud worldly noise. This hidden call becomes the true anti-Dagood current. It's the ultimate contrast between visible form and hidden continuity. The sources beautifully place Asiya in verse 66:11, inside Pharaoh's oppressive kingdom, calling upward with her heart. Meanwhile, Ibrahim, in verse 37:100, asks for a righteous son and receives downward from a place of pure surrender. One asks upward from oppression, the other receives downward from surrender. True power isn't the empire you can see, it's this continuous hidden signal.
Then, verse 38:24 becomes the turning point. King Dawood realizes the signal and immediately falls in repentance. The sources map this as the exact moment the circuit stops its downward fall and begins its upward return. The ego collapses, and the night begins turning toward day. Section 5, activating the book.
So how do we actually plug into this upward return? The sources trace a very precise book lineage to activate the circuit. 1907 is the novel instantiation, leading to 2041 where the reader is prepared, to 1912 taking the book with strength, and finally 6163 flipping the polarity. The chosen ones fulfill the oath through what the sources call the book grip. Let's look closely at 1912. This is the physical execution switch. When the book is gripped, it activates both fields together, the visible form and the hidden continuity. The world might operate as a disconnected, confused civilization, but gripping the book turns the reader from a passive observer into an active node bridging the two realms.
And our final section, Part 6, Continuous Emergence. What happens when this cosmic circuit is fully completed? The sources visualize a cross-topology that parallels the story of Kabil and Habil. It's a collective killing, attempting to terminate the righteous current physically, but because the oppressors don't understand the eternal spirit, they're overtaken by confusion. It isn't annihilation. The true sequence is continuous emergence, life to death to being raised alive.
And verse 6163 perfectly flips the polarity of worldly logic. In this eternal circuit, the sacrifice actually becomes the ransom. Death becomes the very mechanism of preservation, and loss becomes the path of return. Submitting to the circuit completely reverses everything we think we know about power. The whole illusion of the Tahut trap is just shattered. Which brings us back to the ultimate cosmic question in verse 81:8. For what sin was she killed? Remember Kabil seeing the buried body? The burial topology returns here. The sources stress this isn't just historical trivia about ancient times. This question reopens the hidden case against the whole illusionary order of the world. It forces the system that buried the truth to justify itself right before it totally collapses. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought. This text is eternal. The timeless topology of oppression, illusion, the hidden call, and the ultimate return is happening right now, today. Are you just reading a historical book, or is the eternal living circuit executing through you? Thanks for joining me on today's Explainer, and I'll catch you next time.